Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be
Love.
exploring something pretty amazing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
India's economic rise and its growing influence, on the world stage.
Okay. Yeah.
You've given me just a fantastic collection of resources to work with on this.
Really?
Yeah, reports from the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Mm-hmm.
Also, some insights from India's own policy think tank, AITI Aayog.
Interesting.
And then also analyses from both Invest India and the Observer Research Foundation. So,
Oh, a lot to unpack.
yeah, by connecting the dots between all these sources, I think we can paint a really clear picture
Yeah.
of where India stands today, economically, strategically, in its partnerships all across the globe.
Yeah. It's a really exciting time to be watching India. I mean, their recent achievements are
Yeah.
really pretty impressive.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that India is now the world's fifth largest economy, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
This isn't just a statistic, right?
Well,
This signifies a major shift in the global economic landscape. And I'm really curious to dig into
yeah.
what fueled this growth and what it means for, the balance of power globally.
Well, I think one of the key factors is their incredible GDP growth.
Oh, wow.
Invest India highlights an impressive 8.4% growth in fiscal year 2024,
Wow.
with projections of 7% for the next fiscal year.
That's incredible.
So these numbers position India as the fastest growing large economy in the world right now.
Wow. I mean, that kind of sustained growth, that's certainly attracting attention, right, from investors worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, does this mean we're likely to see even more foreign investment flowing into India in the coming years?
It's very, very likely.
Wow.
Invest India points out that a staggering 67.6% of all foreign direct investment inflows since April 2000 have come in just the last decade. So that's a
Wow.
clear indicator of growing confidence in India's economic future.
Yeah. And it's not just about attracting investment, right? It's about what India is producing and exporting.
Right.
Invest in India also reports a surge in exports, reaching a total of $437.06 billion.
Wow.
What does that tell us about India's role in global trade,
Yeah.
becoming a major player?
Yeah, I think it signifies, a substantial shift in India's engagement with the global market.
Right.
They're no longer just a consumer, they're a major producer and exporter competing on a global scale.
Right. Okay. So the overall economic picture is incredibly positive.
Yeah.
But let's zoom in on some specific sectors where India is really excelling
Yeah.
that you picked out.
Yeah.
You highlighted agriculture as a major strength. What specifically stood out to you from the data?
Well, I mean, the sheer scale of production is just astounding.
Yeah.
Invest India reports a horticulture production estimate of 355.25 million tons for 2023-24.
Oh, wow.
So this level of output is not only significant for India's own food security, but also has major implications, I think, for global food supplies.
Wow.
Something, to keep an eye on, maybe especially given, your interest in
Yeah.
agricultural investments.
That's a great point. Yeah. India's agricultural success could definitely create new opportunities for investors.
Right.
And then that could have ripple effects on, global food markets for sure.
Yeah. And, they're not just producing for domestic consumption.
Yeah.
Agricultural exports reached $53.1 billion in 2022-23,
Wow.
demonstrating their active engagement in the global market. And what's even more fascinating, I think, is the government's ambition to double agricultural exports to $100 billion by 2030.
Oh, wow. That's a bold target.
It is.
What strategies are they employing to achieve this level of growth in agricultural exports?
Well, they're focusing on several key areas, improving infrastructure to facilitate trade, promoting value-added agricultural products, and exploring new markets for their produce. So
It's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
It seems like they're setting themselves up for success in this sector.
yeah.
Now, let's shift gears to another area where India is making waves, electric mobility.
Yeah.
This is particularly interesting to me, considering the global push for sustainability. What's catching your eye in this area?
Well, I mean, India is clearly embracing the transition to electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Their commitment to reducing emissions and embracing sustainable transport is evident, I think, in these projections.
Yeah, the numbers from Invest India are pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
They're anticipating 5 million electric two-wheelers on the roads by 2025.
Wow.
A total of 17 million electric vehicles sold annually by 2030. So that suggests a significant shift in, the Indian automotive landscape.
Exactly. And the government is actively encouraging this transition through its faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid electric vehicles initiative.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, FAMEO, as it's commonly known. They're providing subsidies and incentives to encourage both consumers and manufacturers to embrace these electric vehicles.
So it's a pretty comprehensive approach then, huh?
Yeah.
Targeting both public and private transportation to maximize the impact of these initiatives.
Right.
Are there any specific aspects of this FIMOL initiative that stand out to you?
Well, they're focusing on supporting the development of charging infrastructure, which is essential
Right.
for the widespread adoption of electric vehicles.
That's crucial. Yeah. Reliable and accessible charging infrastructure. I mean, that's key, I think, to overcoming range anxiety and making electric vehicles a practical option for more people.
Right.
Now, before we move on from our discussion of key sectors, we need to talk about semiconductors.
Okay.
This seems to be an area where India is making a strategic push.
Absolutely. India is prioritizing semiconductors for both economic growth and technological advancement.
Right.
They recognize that semiconductors are kind of the foundational building blocks of modern technology, driving, everything from smartphones and computers to artificial intelligence and 5G networks.
Right. And as these technologies continue to advance, the global demand for semiconductors, I mean, that's only going to intensify.
It is, yeah.
Is India aiming to become like a major player in this critical industry?
Yes, they're aiming to boost their domestic semiconductor manufacturing capacity.
Okay.
This is a strategic move to reduce their reliance on imports and position themselves as a key player in the global semiconductor supply chain.
It's a smart move for both economic and strategic reasons.
Right.
Given, your expertise, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see for India as it seeks to establish itself as a major player in the semiconductor industry?
Well, it's a highly competitive industry that requires significant investment,
Yeah.
technological expertise, and a skilled workforce.
Yeah.
India will need to attract foreign investment, foster innovation, and build up its domestic manufacturing capabilities to compete on a global scale.
Right. It's a bold ambition. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. Yeah. Now let's zoom out a bit and consider India's relationships on the world stage, particularly with the United States.
Yeah.
The CSIS analysis you provided suggests a shift towards a more reciprocal relationship under the second Trump administration. I have to admit, the term reciprocity, that's a bit vague to me.
It is.
Could you unpack that? What does that mean in practical terms for U.S.-India relations?
Yeah, I think it signifies a move away from a relationship where, maybe one side perceived an imbalance in give and take.
Right.
It suggests a greater emphasis on ensuring that both countries are benefiting from the relationship in a more balanced way.
So it's about ensuring that both sides are getting something out of the relationship rather than, one side feeling like they're carrying more of the weight.
Precisely. It's about fairness and mutual benefit. However, this shift toward reciprocity, could lead to some bumps along the road.
You're referring to the potential for turbulence in trade relations that was mentioned in the CSIS analysis.
Yes. As both countries seek to negotiate more favorable terms for themselves, there could be, some friction and disagreement. It's a natural part of any evolving relationship.
So while the overall partnership, I guess, between India and the U.S. seems to be strong, there might be some areas where, their economic interests don't perfectly align,
right?
Which could lead to potential trade disputes.
Exactly. But even with these potential challenges, the partnership between India and the U.S. remains significant,
right?
Especially in addressing major global issues.
The CSIS event transcript emphasized the need for the U.S. to consult with key global partners, like India, before making major economic security decisions.
Yeah.
So this suggests that, India's voice is being heard, its interests are being considered more seriously than ever before.
That's a key takeaway, yeah. India is no longer on the periphery of global decision-making. It's a central player whose views are being actively sought.
Yeah, it's a testament to India's growing economic and geopolitical clout.
Yeah.
And speaking of geopolitics, beyond the bilateral relationship with the U.S., what about India's role on a broader global stage?
Yeah.
The Observer Research Foundation provides some insights on that.
Yes.
What did they have to say?
Well, the ORF highlights India's increasing diplomatic engagement through initiatives like the Raisina Dialogue,
Okay.
which serves as, a prominent platform for global leaders to discuss pressing geopolitical and geoeconomic issues.
Ah, the Rosina Dialogue.
Yes.
For those of us who might not be familiar, could you give a brief explanation of what that is?
Yeah. It's a multilateral conference hosted by India that brings together heads of state, policymakers, business leaders, and experts from all around the world to discuss a wide range of global challenges.
Wow.
It's a platform for India to project its voice, share its perspective, and, shape the global agenda.
So it's not just about economic power. It's about
Right.
thought leadership and shaping, global conversations on critical issues.
Precisely. And the ORF's diverse research on topics like climate change, energy transition, and Eurasian studies demonstrates India's active participation
Right.
in addressing these complex global challenges.
So this paints a picture of India as a nation that's not only focused on its own economic growth,
Yeah.
but also actively engaging with the rest of the world to find solutions, to these shared challenges.
Exactly. They're not just sitting at the table. They're helping to set the agenda and drive the conversation.
That's a powerful image.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that India is a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
Not just in terms of its economic might, but also in its diplomatic influence and thought leadership on the world stage.
Yeah.
This has been a really insightful overview, I think.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious to hear your perspective on something that's been on my mind.
Okay.
What does India's economic and geopolitical rise, what does that mean for other countries, particularly those in the West?
That's a crucial question and one that deserves careful consideration.
Yeah.
India's growth presents both opportunities and challenges for the West. On one hand, India's expanding market and its burgeoning middle class, they offer enormous potential for trade and investment.
So there's a huge economic upside then for Western companies
Absolutely.
looking to tap into India's growth story.
Absolutely. And India's increasing technological capabilities make it a valuable partner for collaboration in areas like AI, clean energy, and space exploration.
It sounds like there's potential for, mutually beneficial partnerships that drive innovation and economic progress for both sides.
Exactly. However, we also need to acknowledge that India's rise could also present certain challenges.
Okay.
As India becomes more assertive on the global stage, it may increasingly pursue its own strategic interests, which may not always align perfectly with those of the West.
So while there's significant opportunities for collaboration, we might also see more competition than for resources, influence, markets, as India flexes its economic and diplomatic muscles.
That's a possibility, yeah. And as India seeks to reduce its reliance on the West, it may forge stronger partnerships with other countries, potentially shifting the balance of power in certain regions.
Right. It's a complex and evolving landscape with both opportunities and challenges for, the West to navigate.
Yes. And it will require a strategic and nuanced approach from Western nations.
Right.
It's crucial for policymakers and business leaders in the West to engage with India proactively, understanding both its potential and its ambitions.
So a deeper understanding of India's aspirations and its role on the world stage will be essential, I think, for navigating this new era of, global relations.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to get your perspective on something a little bit closer to home.
Sure.
How do you envision India's continued rise impacting your own life and work in the years ahead?
That's a great question. For me, it reinforces the importance of staying informed and adaptable. India's growth is impacting everyone, from individuals to businesses to global institutions.
Right.
And it's essential to understand these shifts and adapt our strategies accordingly.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
And that decisions made in one part of the world can have, these ripple effects across the globe.
Exactly. Yeah. We can't afford to be complacent or think that these changes won't affect us.
Right. It's an invitation to be proactive.
Right.
To engage with these changes and to seek out those opportunities for collaboration and mutual benefit.
And perhaps even to consider how we can contribute to shaping a more positive and sustainable future in this increasingly interconnected world.
That's a powerful takeaway.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from India's economic surge to its evolving relationships with, key players like the U.S.
Yeah.
And even touched upon the potential impact of India's rise on a global scale.
Right.
Now, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to consider as we move into the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Given India's, rapid growth and increasing global influence, how do you see the geopolitical landscape shifting in the coming years?
That's a question we'll continue to explore in our next segment.
Okay.
Where we'll delve deeper into some of the specific geopolitical implications of India's rise and what it means for the future of global power dynamics.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive on India's economic growth and global relations.
It's great to be back. In our last segment, we kind of laid the groundwork there, exploring India's, impressive economic performance.
Yeah.
And spotlighting some of its key sectors.
Right.
Now, let's tackle I think, a little bit more complex question.
Okay.
What are the geopolitical implications of India's rise? How might this impact, you and your work, considering your global business interests?
Well, as India's, economic and military strength grows, so too does its influence on the world stage.
Right.
And this naturally raises questions about how existing global power dynamics might shift.
Right. We touched upon India's growing relationship with the U.S., right?
Yes.
And the CSIS analysis that pointed to a need for greater reciprocity.
Right.
Does this signal a potential power shift, or at least a rebalancing in the Indo-Pacific region? And what could that mean for, businesses operating in that area?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. The U.S. has historically been the dominant power in the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
But with India's economy surging and its military capabilities expanding, it's only natural for India to seek a more prominent role in, regional affairs.
The CSIS event transcript we discussed emphasizes strengthening the Indo-Pacific through alliances and partnerships. Could India become a key player in this effort, perhaps even acting as a counterweight to, China's growing influence in the region?
That's a scenario many analysts are discussing. India and the U.S., they share a common interest in maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Right.
They're both wary of China's increasingly assertive actions in the region.
Yeah.
So closer cooperation between the two countries, along with other regional partners, could be a strategic move to balance China's growing power.
This all sounds incredibly intricate.
Yeah.
If these geopolitical dynamics were to play out, what specific actions or policies might we see from India and its partners in the coming years?
Well, I think on the military front, we might see more joint exercises, increased defense cooperation between India and the U.S., as well as with countries like Japan and Australia. These partnerships could enhance interoperability and send a signal of deterrence to potential adversaries.
So it's about projecting strength, but in a collaborative way.
Exactly. On the economic front, we could see India taking a more proactive role in shaping regional trade agreements and investment partnerships. India is already a member of several regional groups like the Quad, a strategic security dialogue between the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India. It's likely they'll leverage these platforms to advance their economic interests and, counter China's economic influence.
So this kind of this multi-pronged approach, strengthening military ties, shaping regional trade, building strategic partnerships, this is clearly aimed at, securing India's interests.
Yes.
But does this increase the risk of conflict?
Well,
does India's growing assertiveness, does that raise the possibility of tensions, escalating into something more serious?
That's a risk that should be acknowledged, yeah. As India's power grows, it's likely to face pushback from China, which views itself as, the dominant force in Asia.
Right.
Border disputes between the two nations have flared up in recent years, and there's always a risk of escalation.
So managing those, border tensions and finding ways to peacefully coexist with China will be critical for regional stability. What does this mean for businesses like yours, that are operating in the region?
Well, it underscores the importance of, staying informed about geopolitical developments and assessing potential risks. Businesses need to be adaptable and have contingency plans in place to navigate potential disruptions.
Right. It seems like a challenging and complex geopolitical landscape to navigate. How should other countries, particularly those in the West, how should they approach this evolving situation?
Well, I think the key is to, engage with India strategically and constructively,
Okay.
recognize India's growing power and influence, and work towards building partnerships that are mutually beneficial.
Right.
At the same time, don't shy away from addressing areas of disagreement or voicing concerns when necessary. Open and honest dialogue
Yeah.
will be essential for building trust and managing potential conflicts.
So it's about acknowledging India's role on the world stage
Right.
and engaging with them in a respectful and mutually beneficial way,
Yes.
while also being prepared to, stand up for one's own interests
Right.
when needed.
Precisely. Now, we've discussed the potential geopolitical implications of India's rise, but let's shift our focus to the global economy.
Okay.
Could India's growth reshape global trade patterns and investment flows?
That's a fascinating question. India is already a major player in the global economy.
Yes.
And as its middle class continues to expand,
Right.
it will become an even more significant market for goods and services.
Right.
How might this impact the global economic landscape? And how could businesses, position themselves to benefit from these shifts?
Well, I think India's growing consumer market presents a tremendous opportunity for businesses worldwide. Companies that can adapt their products and services to meet the needs of Indian consumers will be well positioned for success.
So it's not just about selling to India. It's about
Right.
understanding the India market and tailoring offerings
Right.
to meet the specific needs and preferences of Indian consumers.
Absolutely. And India's growing technological prowess could make it, a hub for innovation,
Yeah.
further propelling global economic growth.
Right.
We've already witnessed India's strides in sectors like IT and pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
and we can expect to see even more innovation emerging from India in the years to come.
India as a powerhouse of innovation. That's an exciting prospect.
Yeah.
What specific areas of innovation do you see as having the most potential?
Well, I think areas like renewable energy, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence, they're ripe for innovation in India.
Okay.
They have the talent, the resources, and the ambition to make significant breakthroughs in these fields.
So a potential driver of global economic growth
Yeah.
and a source of cutting-edge innovation.
Yes.
But are there any challenges associated with India's rise? Could it potentially disrupt existing economic power structures
Whoa.
and create new tensions?
There's certainly a possibility of disruption as India aims to climb the global value chain and become more competitive in areas like manufacturing. It could challenge the dominance of existing economic powerhouses like China and the West.
So this could lead to some economic friction and competition as nations
Yeah.
adjust to this new reality.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to businesses operating in this, shifting landscape?
Well, I think it's essential to stay agile, monitor market trends, and be prepared to adapt business strategies as needed.
Okay.
Diversifying supply chains and exploring new markets could be crucial for mitigating risks and capitalizing on emerging opportunities.
So India's economic and geopolitical rise presents, both opportunities and challenges, I think, for the world.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways for our listeners as they consider the implications of this transformative shift?
Well, the main takeaway is that, India is a rising power that demands attention. It's playing an increasingly important role in both the global economy and geopolitics.
Right.
Its actions will have a significant impact on the world for years to come.
Understanding India's aspirations, its strengths, and its potential challenges, that's essential, I think, for navigating the complexities of the 21st century world.
Absolutely. And perhaps it's also an opportunity to consider the potential benefits that India's growth presents, both for individuals and businesses.
That's an excellent point. As we conclude this segment, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
Given the complexities we've discussed, do you envision a future where India and the West can collaborate to address global challenges?
Yeah.
Or will their diverging interests inevitably lead to increased competition and conflict?
Right.
And what would each of those scenarios mean for someone like you with global business interests?
That's a question we'll continue to explore in our final segment. We'll delve deeper into the potential scenarios for the future of India's relationship with the West and the implications for the global order.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into India's economic and geopolitical landscape. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. From India's economic surge and its growing influence in key sectors to the implications of its rise for, the global balance of power, it's been quite a journey.
And a fascinating one. We've also delved into the, I think, complex relationship between India and the West.
Yeah.
Acknowledging both the potential for collaboration and the possibility of friction as, their interests kind of intersect and sometimes diverge.
Right. And that brings us to the crucial question we posed at the end of the last segment.
Right.
Do you envision a future where India and the West can, effectively work together to address these shared global challenges? Or will their differences inevitably lead to, increased competition and even conflict?
It's a question that has significant implications, not just for India and the West, but for the entire world.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on this?
Well, it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
The future of the relationship between India and the West will depend on, a multitude of factors, including the choices made by leaders on both sides and the broader geopolitical context. However, let's explore some potential scenarios, maybe.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach. Let's start by looking at areas where you see potential for cooperation between India and the West.
Okay.
What common ground might they find?
Well, one area that immediately comes to mind is climate change.
Okay.
It's a global challenge that requires, collective action.
Right.
And India, with its vast population and, rapidly growing economy, is a crucial player in any effort to mitigate climate change. This directly affects him as well, considering your investments in, renewable energy.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ORF's research on energy transition and climate action highlights India's engagement in these issues.
Right.
And we know that many Western countries are also, committed to tackling climate change. So could this shared concern be a foundation for collaboration, you think?
Absolutely. There's immense potential for collaboration on clean energy technologies, sustainable development practices, and climate finance mechanisms.
Right.
Working together on these fronts could benefit not only India and the West, but also contribute to a healthier planet for everyone.
It's a powerful reminder that shared challenges can sometimes, transcend political differences.
Yeah.
Are there other areas where you see similar potential for collaboration?
I think technology and innovation are another promising area.
Okay.
India's, a major player in the IT sector.
Yeah.
And its growing pool of, talented engineers and scientists makes it an attractive hub for research and development. This could be particularly relevant to your work in venture capital, given your focus on tech startups.
Right. Yeah. We did discuss India's ambitions in the semiconductor industry and its potential to become, a global leader in manufacturing and innovation. Could this create opportunities for partnerships with, Western companies and research institutions?
Definitely. There's great potential for joint ventures, knowledge sharing, and, technology transfer between India and the West in cutting-edge fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and renewable energy.
Right.
These collaborations could drive innovation and generate economic benefits for both sides.
So there's a clear economic incentive for collaboration in these, advanced fields.
Yeah.
Leading to potential win-win scenarios for both India and the West.
Right.
But let's be realistic here. There's also areas where their interests might clash.
Right.
Where do you see potential for friction or competition?
Well, I think trade is one area where we might see some tension. Okay, as India's economy expands and its companies become more globally competitive, they'll be looking for new markets to penetrate. This could lead to, increased competition with Western companies, particularly in sectors where, the West has traditionally held a dominant position.
Right, so we might see trade disputes and tensions emerge as India kind of asserts its economic interests on the world stage.
It's certainly a possibility, yeah.
Okay.
These tensions could be exacerbated by differences in regulatory standards, intellectual property protection, and labor practices. Navigating these complex issues will require, diplomatic finesse and a willingness to compromise on both sides.
Finding ways to manage these economic frictions will be crucial for, maintaining a stable and mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah.
What strategies could be employed to achieve this, you think?
Well, I think open communication, transparency, and a commitment to fair competition, that will be essential.
Okay.
Establishing, clear rules and mechanisms for dispute resolution could help to prevent these disagreements from escalating into major conflicts.
That makes sense. Yeah, building trust and fostering a spirit of cooperation will be key, I think, to navigating these complex issues. Now, besides trade,
hmm
are there other potential areas of friction?
Well, I think geopolitics is another area where we could see some friction. As we've discussed, India is becoming, a more assertive player in the Indo-Pacific region.
Right.
And its growing military capabilities could disrupt the existing balance of power. This has implications for global security
Yeah.
and could impact, your investments in defense technology.
And with both India and the U.S. wary of China's rising influence, we could see, increased competition for strategic partnerships and military alliances in the region.
That's a possibility, yeah. And if these, competitions aren't managed carefully, they could escalate tensions and, increase the risk of miscalculation or even accidental conflict.
Yeah.
Open communication, clear understanding of each other's, strategic goals, and a commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes, those will be paramount.
It seems like navigating this multifaceted relationship will require a delicate balancing act.
It will, yeah.
Finding ways to cooperate where interests align while managing differences and mitigating potential conflicts will be crucial.
Exactly. It will require a nuanced approach, long-term vision, and a recognition that both India and the West have a shared interest in a stable and prosperous global order.
And that working together on issues of common concern like climate change, global health, terrorism, that's essential for achieving that shared vision.
Precisely. Perhaps by, focusing on these areas of common ground, they can build trust and create a more positive and, collaborative relationship that benefits not just India and the West, but the entire world.
That's a hopeful vision for the future. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Yeah.
What should they be paying attention to as they, observe this evolving relationship between India and the West?
Well, the most important takeaway, I think, is that India is a rising power with its own, unique set of interests and aspirations.
Right.
It's not simply an extension of the West, nor can it be easily categorized. It's a complex and dynamic nation that's shaping its own destiny.
So it's essential to engage with India on its own terms,
Yeah.
recognizing its diversity, its complexities, and its potential to shape the future of, global affairs.
Absolutely. It's also crucial to pay attention to the areas where, India's interests converge with those of the West, as well as the areas where they diverge. Understanding these dynamics is key for navigating the relationship and making informed decisions.
Being informed, being strategic, and being open to the possibilities that this dynamic relationship presents, those are key.
Exactly. And perhaps, even consider the potential opportunities that India's growth presents for them.
That's a great point. As we conclude our deep dive, we encourage you to stay curious, stay engaged, and stay tuned as the story of India's rise, continues to unfold.
It's a story that's still being written.
Yeah.
And it's one that will undoubtedly shape the course of the 21st century.
Well, thank you for joining us on this insightful journey.
Thank you.